Good morning. Hi, this is John Lisbon from Pointit, and welcome to our webinar today, Demystifying Google's Content Network. Glad you can all join us. I'm also joined here today by Frank Coyle, our VP of Sales. Good morning, Frank. How are you doing?
Good, John. Nice sunny day today, so things are going well. Looking forward to today's webinar.
Oh, yes. It's sunny always in Seattle.
Well, on my part.
Well, great to have everybody here today. I think we've got a really informative webinar today to help you understand what the content network is about. I'm going to be talking about initially some of the history of Google's content network, and then Frank's going to bring you up to speed on what's happening today. First, I'm going to give you some webinar logistics. This is being recorded. You are being recorded. No, I'm not, just kidding. And we'll be sending out an email with a link later this week, so if you, by chance you miss something, you'll be able to download the recording on demand. And we're also going to be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so feel free to enter your questions in the chat box. We'll be answering those towards the end. A little bit about Pointit. We were launched in April of 2002, so we've been around for practically 7 years now, offering paid search and search engine optimization. We're one of Seattle's largest independent search marketing firms. Last year, I think we managed about $30 million in search media and servicing clients across all verticals and revenue models. Okay, so as promised, I'm going to talk about start off with a little history on the Google Content Network. Back in the day, it was cheap to play this game both in pay-per-click and on the pay-per-click network or the search network, as well as on the content network. Over time, however, prices rose. But even though it was cheap and everybody can play, the content network was really not cheap. It wasn't performing at all. It wasn't performing well. And the content network is, as many of you know, very different than the search network. The content network is comprised of publishers who host advertisers' ads, and Google places those ads on the publisher sites. Publishers join the content network through a program called AdSense, Google AdSense. And if they host the ads and somebody clicks on the ad, they get a revenue share. So that kind of led to some gaming of the system and a whole industry about click fraud, which many of you heard about probably in the past. And click fraud was an issue, is becoming less of an issue, but it's still something to be aware of. But that caused a lot of the click fraud was occurring on the content network, because these publishers could make money kind of, while they're in their underwear and clicking on their own links. So now they have to work for it. And the reasons that has happened and how that has improved over time. Well, first, Google gave you some insights, started giving you some insights into who the publishers were. So savvy marketers could see where your sites were being published, or where your ads were being published on which sites, and break those down and see which of the publishers in the content network were performing well and which were not. Actually, at first it was not transparent, and you had to use like third-party tools. We were using a tool called Atlas Search, and using that in order to decipher where our ads were showing on the Google's content network, which were performing well. And we actually found a lot of sites that were performing very poorly, and got thousands of dollars of refunds for some of our clients. Yahoo at the time called it goodwill refunds, and nobody was really admitting at the time that it was click fraud. However, things have changed. Again, the first thing that they did was they allowed advertisers to bid differently on the content network than the search network, and some of you may remember that. And then over time, they started giving a little more transparency so you can see which sites you were showing up on. And I think the real game changer was something called smart pricing that Google introduced about a year ago. And what that did was pay the publishers less if their sites were not converting, and paid more to publishers whose sites were converting for advertisers like you and me. So that really changed the game. And at that point, the Google Content Network in particular started becoming much more competitive with the search network. In fact, today, most of our clients are on the Google network, and it's a great opportunity. So that brings us up today. So I want to introduce Frank, and how you doing this morning, Frank? Frank's going to talk about Google Content Network.
Awesome, John. Yeah, this is the Content Network is something I really get excited about because I often come across clients who may have tried it before in the past, didn't have a lot of success, and really I'm able to open their eyes into some, good traffic, good performance on the Content Network. Of course, nothing guaranteed, but it's a lot different than it was in the past. So what is the Content Network? Very briefly, it's the world's largest online advertising network. It comprises millions of pages with which display ads, whether it's display ads themselves or text ads. And this can be managed through Google, can be managed through Yahoo, some independent parties like Pulse 360 who manages some of the ads on CNN, on MSN, etc. So lots of ways of getting your ads on these places, but our focus today will be Google's Content Network. And the types of sites, you name it, news sites, forums, YouTube, about.com, you just about you name any site, any major site, and there's a very good chance you'll be able to advertise on it. So let's take a quick look at a couple of examples. Here is a screenshot from CNN.com. Here's a text ad on the right-hand side. This text block actually of 3 ads is one of the best performing types of ad blocks. You might see some which have a string of a row of 4 ads across the top of a page, or maybe a block of 4 ads instead of the 3 here. In addition to this, there are display ads you've seen. Earlier, I think it was this year, or rather last year, there was an insurance company which had those dancing people, and then they were very successful, and then suddenly everyone was doing it, and now I think people just kind of tune them out. One of my favorite places to advertise in the Content Network actually are in forums. I love being able to place ads in forums because those are where people are going who want answers to questions. Now, not every forum lets you place ads in there, but if they do, then jump on it. And we're going to talk to you in a little bit about how you can actually get in the forums. But what I want to do in my section is I want to take you through some best practices for advertising in the Content Network. We'll talk about how to structure your campaigns. We'll look at keywords and ads copy, and they are way different than on the search campaign. We'll talk about bid strategy, and then of course how you measure and perform. And one thing to keep in mind, the primary difference between Content Network and the search network is on search, people are doing just that. They are searching for something. On the Content Network, they're not. They're actually just reading a page about sports or the news, or they're in a forum trying to look for some information, and you've got to grab their attention. You've got to jump up and say, hey, I'm over here, look at my ad. And that's what I think those dancing characters were doing. But we're going to show you some ways of how you can do that even within text ads. So let's begin with creating a Content Network campaign. When you create a campaign in Google, by default, it will select both the search and the content networks. So you would see Google search checked, you'd see the search partners checked, and you'd see the content checked. When you create a brand new campaign just for content, only have the content network checked here. Do not have these 2 guys checked. As you'll see as we go through this, the dynamics of each network are different types of ads, different keyword strategy, different bidding strategy. Keep your content separate from your search campaigns. So let's begin with keywords. Keywords are a whole different ballgame. Don't think of keywords as individual words. Think of them as themes. For example, if you're in the fitness business, you're going to have lots of different keywords about, maybe six-pack abs or muscle building or aerobics and things like that. Well, here's Google's challenge. Google wants to know where to put your content. And by theming your keywords, that is, grouping them into similar themes and then building ad groups around those themes, then Google knows, oh yeah, this is about abs, this is about muscle building. I'm going to go out and find all those pages about muscle building, and I'm going to put these ads on it. Or I'm going to find all the pages about aerobics, and I'm going to put ads on it. If of course those ads, if those sites are accepting ads. As far as a theme, how many keywords do you need to create a theme? Well, really, it's as few as probably as little as 5 or 10. I know some people who are able to do single word ad groups, single keyword ad groups, but I'd say that's rare. Just have enough to have a theme so Google can pick up that, hey, this is about abs. Now, how about how many? What's the max you should have? Well, Google doesn't really like to see any more than 50 keywords. In fact, if you get more than 50 keywords, I've got news for you. Google does not read beyond the 50th. It basically takes the first 50th and 50, and that's it. And even on search, a best practice is to have the fewer the better. If you're sitting with ad groups just now with 50, 100, I saw one last week with 1,000 keywords in there. You got to work on simplifying that. As it relates to the content network, though, keep it between 5, 25. That's a good range for it. And the one question I get often is, well, what about the match type? Bottom line, just use broad. Google does not pay any attention to exact or phrase. They are irrelevant in the content network because the only thing that matters is the theme. So all you have to do is get the words on the page. And that's all, the words in there, and broad will do just fine. Now, what about ad copy? This is significantly different. And I'm going to take you through this page of four examples of content network ad displays. The one in the top left-hand corner about spyware is kind of blah. If you look down here, there's nothing really that stands out. You see spyware, you see antivirus, spyware again. Nothing really that's going to jump out and make me stop if I'm reading that particular page. Let's go to the top right-hand side now and look at a couple of these ones. Now, these examples are in the teeth whiteners, and if you've been on the internet at all over the last few months, teeth are everywhere. The ads about yellow teeth, white teeth, they have pictures of teeth now, and that is a clue for you. Those guys, I can tell you, I know it firsthand, these guys are top money makers on the internet. They know exactly what they're doing. They're testing like crazy. Follow what they're doing, and you could do pretty well. But let's see what kind of ads they've got here. Top teeth whiteners in quotations with the question mark jumps out at you. The second guy down has made really good use of a number and a parenthesis. Again, it's a stopper. The next guy, Bellevue Cosmetic, the dentist, that does nothing. The next one's $16.99, a little hyphen in the middle. These kind of things that I'm pointing out here are breaking the typical flow of someone who might just scan this. The guy at the bottom, tooth whitening, that could do with some work there. Over in the bottom left-hand corner, if you take a quick scan down here, the one that jumps out is the $12 iPod Touch. The reason it stands out is that the dollar sign, that's different. There's no dollar sign in these others. There are numbers. And beyond this this headline, and actually he's making good use of all the characters here, he's actually got a very good he's got good copy in here. Save up to 92%, start bidding on yours now. So this is a well-written ad, and I'll bet you this gets clicked on more often than anybody else in this category. In this last one in the bottom right, if you just take a quick scan down this, you'll see one jumps out immediately. It's this guy here, and what he's done, I think that's very clever, is it's not just that he's put free in here, but these parentheses is kind of a disruptor. He's also put it at the right-hand side instead of the left-hand side. This guy up here had it at the left-hand side, which is okay, but I think on the right is better because we typically read from left to right, and he's kind of caught you at the end. So I think that's a good job. So what have we seen? We've seen things like putting headlines in quotation marks. We've seen numbers. We've seen parentheses. We've even seen the use of free. We've seen dollar signs. I'll give you examples of breaking up or stopping the reader in their track as they scan over this.
It's great stuff, Frank.
Now,
I think that's, all great best practices that you're bringing up. But of course, the main thing is once you have those ads and when you're testing, and there's the great thing about search advertising is there's a feedback loop, and you can take that information and test different ads against each other and figure out which one is doing the best. Because sometimes you think you have it all figured out, but you can be surprised at what works and what doesn't work. But like you said,
yep.
those teeth whitener guys are very sophisticated.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. Okay, so we talked about some text ads there. Let's talk about display ads. On the left-hand side here, I have a text block. I actually pulled this from CNN just a couple of days ago. This is on the front page. This is all about golf, and then it was replaced by this text block. Sorry, by this display ad here for it looks like credit scores. So how do you, what I'm going to talk about is how you can go from a single ad here, like this little text ad here, to this guy without actually costing you too much. So let's talk about the dynamics. Here we have 3 ads, and let's assume they're all 30 cents each is what the rough average cost per click is. If you want to outbid this guy, if you want this ad here on the right, if you want your display ad to own this block here, Google will let you do it as long as you have a max bid, which is roughly three times what an average click cost is here, CPC is here. So if this is your ad here and you saw it was doing well and you wanted to go the route of creating a display ad, just bid 3x of your text ad. Now what will happen here is when Google starts showing your ad, it won't actually charge you 3x. It'll charge you just a little bit more than it would have got from the highest ad on the highest of these 3 ads here. So for example, if this was maybe 32 cents, if this was the highest one, even though you're bidding like 90 cents, Google will probably show your ad for maybe 33, 34 cents. Now, here's where it gets really good. Display ads typically have a better click-through rate than text ads. Let's face it, this guy here is more likely to get a click on than one of these little text ads over here. As your click-through rate increases, Google, whether it's on search or whether it's on content, will start lowering your cost per click. And what you can find over time is that cost per click for this display ad that you are bidding 3 times this whole, 3 times your normal bid here, is actually going to have a lower cost per click than you ever bid on this side for your performing ad. It does take time to do that, but it can happen. So it is well worth testing. Don't be scared off by having to bid 3x. You're not going to have to pay 3x. Now, one caveat here, one warning. Only do this, only move from a text ad to a display ad when you know that this page, this website, and this ad block performs for you. John's going to talk to you about how you can actually see what your performance is for an ad on a given page. But once you have that information and you know it's profitable and you know how much is profitable, then consider moving into display. And incidentally, Google has got a really good tool for creating display ads now, so it's well worth looking at. Okay, there are some quirks that come along with the content network as it relates to ads. First of all your ads are actually approved by humans. Yes, Google's got people out there reading every line of your copy. Unlike the search network, where if you create an ad, you can see it running within about 10-15 minutes. These ones are actually read by human beings because these ads are actually going to go on people's pages, and they want to make sure that appropriate things are in the ad. It can take, I've seen it take up to 48 hours to get the ads approved. Typically it'll take just a few hours, but I have found that if I create an ad on a Friday afternoon, oftentimes that ad doesn't become approved and start running until Monday morning. So it can take a while. Just be aware of that. When it starts, impressions are going to be slow because Google's figuring out where to place you. And it's a slow build up before you start hitting your budget, but you will see traffic coming in thick and fast once things really start moving. All, of course, within your budget limits. Now, one warning: if you, for some reason, decide that you want to stop your campaign, maybe for the weekend, then and I'm assuming you want to stop it and then start it within a day or two, then don't pause the ad. The reason I say that is because when you do a pause on an ad in the content network, what we found is it actually resets the ad back to the beginning again. So just as in the beginning you had a slow trickle of impressions, that same thing is going to happen with a pause. However, there is a way around it. You can lower your bid, or you can use the ad scheduler you could use to say, I don't want to run it on the weekend. And although that sounds the same as pausing it, for some reason the content network interprets that differently. And if you do that pause, it's a reset. If you do an ad schedule, then it'll just start running again Monday morning on the same places, and you should be getting the same volumes and CPAs right off the bat. Now, talking about bidding. Bidding is different. In the search market, you're thinking of getting in the top 10 on page 1. On the content network, you're actually trying to hit a text block. I'm trying to get in maybe these 4 slots over here. As I mentioned, some of the ad blocks only have 3 ads in them. So what I do as a kind of best practice for me is I always make sure that my position is at least 3 or lower, so 3, 2, or 1 in the content network. And that way I know it's always being displayed, and of course I'm measuring, I'm tracking, I know whether it's working or not, but at least then I know it's being shown. If you find your impressions are low and your average position is, say, 4 or 5 or 6 or beyond, then I guarantee it's likely to be your bid price. So bump up the bid price a bit, and then just start seeing what the traffic is. Now, there are 2 ways of bidding on the content network. One is cost per click, just as you do in the content network, in the search network, and that's the method I thoroughly recommend. It's controllable. You know how it works coming through from the search side of things. You only pay when somebody clicks in your ad. Very, very simple. The other alternative is to pay for impressions. Now, what an impression means that when a page is loaded with your ad on it, that is an impression. And so when you bid for impressions, there's no guarantee, of course, that anyone's going to click on it. Some people have done it, or some people claim that you can do that for branding, but if you're on a high traffic site, you might find that your impressions are going through, boom, within an hour or 2. Whereas, and nobody's clicked. Could be the wrong time of day. Could be the kind of day where people just sort of browse around and they're not in whatever reason, they're not in the mood to click ads. I stay away from that. I'm very much using the content network for direct response. And again, you go back to those teeth whitening guys or the fitness people. That's what they use it for as well. So follow the practices of people who are using this to its best extent. Use it for direct response. Okay, so we've kind of covered creating ads. We've talked about theming the keywords. We've talked about bid strategy. How about placement? Well, when you turn on the Google Content Network, Google will automatically choose the sites for you, and it's to let them do it in the beginning, because they basically place it. You want to keep an eye on where it's doing it. You want to keep an eye on the traffic and the performance. But after a while, you're going to see some places work well, some places don't work as well. And there are tools within Google to let you choose specific places. I'm going to show you a couple in a minute, but I'm going to show you a key one. It's called the placement tool. And it allows you to identify websites that you can place your ads on. And you can do it by browsing specific categories. So you could say, if you're in the fitness business, you could say, okay, give me all the fitness categories. Or if you're in business, give me the technology categories. You could do it by topic. For example, here I have one for investment URLs, or you can do it by demographics. Demographics, incidentally, you could choose, say, I want to advertise for females over 45 or men over 60. Those specific demographics actually come from the sites that you're going to be advertised on. So it might be, you may recall on the site, might have demographics in, maybe it's some kind of, some kind of club you're a part of, and you provide that information. And what that site does is share the demographics with Google if that site is going to allow ads to be placed there. It doesn't provide names and all and emails and all that sort of stuff, but it's just simply the demographics. Now, not every site does that, so when you choose the demographic option, keep in mind it's not 100%. It's probably a good rough estimate, but maybe worth a shot, maybe worth trying out. But whatever method you choose, down at the bottom here of that page, the sites are going to be listed out. Sites that you can place on. So for example, here is moneycontrol.com. This was for my investing topic. And incidentally, it would be a long list here. I've just cut it off. You can choose to be on the whole site or specific portions of it. Now this one here says it's going to be on, there must be a section called portfolio, and it's going to be in the top and it's going to be in the center. I always go to the sites and have a look. In fact, I believe there's a little option here you can click on and actually see where on the site you can be. I always try and choose locations that are above the fold, the top half of the screen, because I'm not going to rely on people scrolling down before they see my ad. Remember, if you're doing it by impression, that impression counts for the whole page, whether it's above the screen or below. So if someone doesn't scroll down, they never see your impression before. So you go ahead here and select the area of the page you want to be on simply by clicking the add button just over here. And then you can bid on the specific places. You have a lot of control over it, and then later you see you can go back and measure that performance for it. So in summary, the best practices for the content network: create a separate content network campaign. Incidentally, let me just address how you do that. There's a very easy way to do it. Simply use the tool like Google AdWords Editor, copy your campaign from search, just copy it over to content, change the settings to content, and then actually go in and start theming the keywords. There's a tool called the Keyword Grouper, which will help you group the keywords into ad groups. But using AdWords Editor is a quick way to get things started. Remember to theme your keywords, make your copy stand out, use some of the little tricks and tips you see that I showed you today, the quotation mark, the numbers, the hyphen, the parentheses, and big enough to make sure you're getting shown. Make sure your average position is 4 or less, and as always, track and measure performance. And speaking of which, John, I'm going to hand it back to you because you've got some good stuff on performance measurement, right?
Yes, thanks, Frank. That was great. Love the accent. Unfortunately, I was born in New Jersey, so I didn't quite
well,
inherit the
I'm
same
a New Yorker, so we're close
by. What I wanted to show you here is Google's new UI. This is being rolled out to all Google advertisers now. And as you can see, we're showing the network tab, and that is in the new user interface of Google. It's showing up now under ad groups, under campaigns, so you can drill down and see it in various areas within the Google interface. And now they have a section called Manage Placements and they're calling it Automatic Placement. So there's been a lot of names for basically the same thing, which are site-targeted ads and the regular content network. So the site-targeted ads are now called managed placements. And what site targeting is are sites or domains where you can specifically say, I want to be on that particular site because it's performing really well for me. And with site targeting, you can actually bid individually on the site rather than in the content network where you're bidding by ad group and you're basically leaving it up to Google's algorithm to determine what sites you show up on. So there's a lot more control in the site targeted campaigns. Below under, as you can see, at the bottom are the list of sites that this particular client is showing up on within the content network. It's the automatic placements again. And I've sorted by conversions in this case, but it basically shows you which sites are doing well and which sites aren't. And it's great information. It's great market research. You can use this information to show your client where they're showing up on, and you can also use it to exclude sites and to add them to the site targeted campaigns right from this interface. So it's really, really exciting stuff that Google just is giving more and more transparency to the advertiser right now. And I'm going to show you now an example of this client in the next slide, which shows that they are showing up on this particular site. So just a reminder, we are going to be taking questions later, so if you have any specific questions, I know some of this might be a little confusing if you're not familiar with Google, so feel free to ask any questions and we'll be answering them later on. But here, again, go ahead.
We're getting some questions coming in, so yeah, keep them flowing.
Great. So here again, for this client who is, it's called, their name is, they're Sweet Greenfields, and they actually produce stevia extracts, and there's their ad, and it's showing up on a site that's very relevant, a site within the content network. So it's Google's semantic algorithm, which is determining which sites to place the ad on, and I can take this screenshot, show it to the client, he can show it to his board. So all this information is great, and in your case, maybe you can show it to your boss and show, hey, this is what this is why you're paying me, I'm doing this kind of stuff. So we'll move to the next slide, and I'll show you a little bit about how we can better optimize a campaign. And I want to show you a placement performance report, better known as PPR, for another acronym thrown at you. At the top, I've sorted by cost and conversions, and as you can see, the ones highlighted in yellow, these are domains that, again, this is a different advertiser, but where they're showing up on the content network. And next to NASDAQ.com at the top, you'll see added, because these sites have been added to the placement campaign. So again, those campaigns, you can bid separately on each of these sites. I can bid higher on NASDAQ.com or ehow.com because it's performing for this client. It makes sense to bid higher, so we make sure that we're always showing up. On the other hand, the sites that are highlighted in red, or and like in.com and whosellsit.com and dogsofthedow.com, next to that, you can see we've excluded them because they haven't been performing well at all. In the case of in.com, they had 3 conversions, and each one was costing about $1,300 or $1,400. So it's a real waste of money. That's a lot of money for anybody, and makes sense to exclude them so they don't show up anymore in the content network. And that's the kind of insights, and that's a simple way that you can optimize your campaign, because the content network is really, the automatic placements is a way to kind of go fishing. You're throwing out your reel. You're seeing what, if you catch anything, if you catch something, you want to make sure you do more of it. If something's not working, well, you stop fishing in that pond. Okay, moving right along to the next. I'm going to show you. This is a little site. This is another tool within Google. It's a site and category exclusion tool, and it's another way for you to exclude sites, but also topics, media types, and page types. So you can exclude within the content network different various topics that don't make sense for your client, for instance, or sites like domain park sites, which traditionally don't work very well for a lot of clients. The problem with this is it's more of an all or nothing. You can't really drill down into the individual sites that you want to exclude. I'm going to take you through a quick case study right now. As you can see here, this is a membership club that client of ours that had about 1,500 keywords in one ad group. And as Frank was mentioning before, you only want maybe 25 or 50 keywords max within an ad group. And Google actually does not look at anything past 50. So their algorithm really can't figure out precisely what sites that your ads should show up on, or what theme that your ads are, the ads that make sense for you. So what we did was we broke it down into 29 ad groups, this one ad group, into 29 different themes. And within a week, and just like that, we increased conversions from 33 conversions to 127 conversions, week-to-week improvement. So this is like amazing. It's not slow growth. It was like night and day. And as Frank mentioned too, there's a tool called Keyword Grouper that makes this even easier. The next week, based on the success we had, we used that tool to create more themes, and we doubled it again. So amazing results. The client's ecstatic about what's happening there. So I want to summarize. The content network is definitely worth testing out. It's working for a lot of clients now. It wasn't always that wasn't always the case, but we do recommend it now. And start out with a small budget. Make sure you optimize, and then you can expand your budget when you figure out that it's working. I would also start actually bidding higher, so you make sure that you get the placements and you get the feedback you need when you start the content network, and then you can start lowering how much you're paying as time goes on per click. Of course, always track where your ads are being placed, and make sure you have your tracking. Use the Google tracking code and measure carefully.
Well, John, hey, thanks. We've come to the formal part. I come to the end of the formal part of the webinar. We actually have got some questions that came in. I'm probably going to pass most of them to you because I think there might be a little bit of trouble with my audio, but I'm going to start with this one. Do you recommend doing a campaign with search and content network clicked on at the same time, or just one or the other at a time?
Yes, good question, Frank. And again, when I was talking about the history of the content network, originally that's how you did it. That's what people did. They just turned on content. In fact, as I said, Google and Yahoo kind of opted you in. So in many cases, you didn't even know you were on the content network. So that was, over time, people learned how to optimize the campaigns, and it makes a lot more sense to separate it out because they are two different beasts, and they act very differently. So you want to definitely separate out your content network so you can make the most of it.
So I would have them separate and both on. Right, so separate them out and no problem having them both on at the same time because they're really independent. Mm-hmm. Okay, we have another one, which is, can I use negatives in a content campaign?
Yes, you can. Just like you use in a paid search campaign, you just want to make sure that you're not limiting where you're showing up as much as possible by having very broad negatives. Maybe use 2 or 3 word negatives. So in that case, you're not, again, limiting where you're showing up because you should use negatives carefully, but it can really help your performance, and it works the same in the content network as it does in the search network.
We had a question at the beginning. Hopefully, I think we may have clarified it. The question was, how can we maximize relevant content to the visitor search criteria? I think one thing we pointed out here, I hope I understand this question, I hope we got it right, but the name of the game here is the visitor isn't really searching on your, for your ad. They're just going to a site, whether it's a forum, whether it's a news site, they're just reading about certain content. So the best you can do as the advertiser is just make sure you write the best ad copy to get their attention. I hope that answers your question. If not, then just if you want to rephrase it, that would be good. One other one we have here, and actually I can take this one, John, because I've done this one recently. Do you recommend content network for local advertisers? And what's the best way to make sure you're paying for local clicks? Well, yes, I actually do recommend it, because within Google you can geo-target. You can specify specific zip codes, cities, metro areas, countries, etc., where you want to have your ads running, and that applies not just for search but also for the content network. And I have seen that happen and work really well. Google is smart about saying, okay, I'm showing this, let's suppose it's a forum, a computer forum. Yes, I'm showing a computer forum page and it's in the Seattle area. I'm going to show local ads because this advertiser has that in their geo-targeting. It works well. Just make sure you have your geo-targeting on and the content network on, and you should be all right. Let's see, I have one other here, which is the click-through rate on our content campaign is really low. Does that affect the quality score? John?
Actually, no, luckily, because Google does not look at click-through rate with the content campaign. So, and there's a good reason for that, because click-through rates tend to be much lower in the content network because, again, people aren't actually searching on your ad. They're just going to the site, and you're trying to catch their attention. So intentionally, I believe Google does not factor in click-through rate into the quality score, where it means so much on the paid search network. It's probably about the most important factor in quality score on the search network, but not to worry about that in the content network from everything I understand. I think there was another question here. How would you track conversions? Is there a way to track where the click or lead came from? Frank, you want to take that one?
Sorry, John. Let's say our moderator just came in there.
Okay.
Okay. The question was how would you track conversions? Is there a way to track where the click or lead came from? Actually, if you have, let me see here, just as you would track conversions in search, the same thing applies for your content network campaigns. So if you have conversion tracking on, you can have, obviously it can come through in analytics, you can see the results coming through in Adwords, and those, if you recall the page John showed a couple of minutes ago with the new UI, it was showing the conversions right there on the page. So
right.
Just replicate what you're doing in search.
Yeah, so Google has their own conversion tracking tool code that you can get within the interface and set it up on your website. And you can also use Google Analytics, and it's free to use. So, and it works really good.
Okay, 2 quick questions, John. Where do we get the keyword grouper tool? Is that a Google tool?
Yes, it's a Google tool, and it's both in the interface. So you just go into the tools section within the interface, and it's also in Google Editor now. So you can use it
Google
in Google
Editor.
AdWords Editor,
yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Another one that I can take here, doesn't Google screen out ads with all caps or crazy punctuation? Yes, it does. So don't use all caps or don't use crazy punctuation, but you can use them. You can use them in moderation, like those quotation marks I showed or parentheses. Just don't go wild. And if you use all caps, Google's pretty good at recognizing that and shutting you down fast. Let's see. Now this one here. What's the difference between CPC and PPC and impressions?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Okay. You want to take that one?
Sure. What was sorry I interrupted you, what was the remainder of that question?
And which should be used for an advertising budget? What's the difference between CPC and PPC?
There is a lot of jargon, and I was afraid of that because we use it. We live this day, day in and day out. CPC is cost per click, and PPC is pay per click. Generally meaning the same thing. Every time somebody clicks on your ad, you pay. And that's one of the great things about search marketing is you only pay when somebody clicks on your ad unless you're doing what is known as CPM, or cost per thousand advertising, and that's when you pay every time your ad shows up on a page. So again, with CPC or PPC, you're only paying if somebody clicks on your ad, and it tends to be a little different. You really want to qualify your visitor in the ad. You want to make sure that when they do pay, they're coming to the right page. It's relevant to what they're clicking on. And with CPM advertising, you tend to want to, in the content network too, grab their attention because you're paying every time the ad shows up, whether somebody clicks on it or not. And as Frank alluded to earlier, CPM advertising is normally associated with brand advertising. Most of the advertisers we deal with are more concerned with direct marketing right now.
John, another question is, what's a good rule of thumb to judge whether a site is a waste of money or is worth raising a bid on?
Yeah, well, I would definitely give your content network. It really depends on how much data you're getting and how much traffic you're getting. It's not really you can't put a rule of thumb as far as, hey, after 1 week or after 2 weeks, because if you're getting a lot of data, you can make that decision a lot quicker than if you're not. So it's more about the amount of data you have, the amount of clicks. I think people sometimes say, 100 clicks, but it's really, you need to get a certain amount of conversions, general conversions among some of the sites to determine that site is worth putting in the placement targeted campaign versus excluding them if they're spending a lot of money. But if you're spending way more than you're comfortable with and it's not converting, it's time to kill it. There are ways to do that a little more systematically. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Frank?
I think it is. I think we all create our own rules of thumbs and them, and a rule of thumbs. I tend to go. I use sort of 3 factors. One is I'll go for a range of clicks in the sort of 30 to 100 range, but I'll also look at the time. If something hasn't got many clicks over like a 2-month period, I might just kill it off. And the other thing I'll take into consideration is the margin I'm going to make, or the profit I'm going to make from the product or service or my clients selling, because maybe they can afford more clicks than somebody with say a cheaper product. So I kind of take those 3 factors into play. But it is a matter of, okay, I got to let it run for a little bit just to see how traffic is coming in, and then I'll make that decision. But there's no hard and fast, but I do look at those 3. Looks like we got a final question here, John. This is a good one. Can you measure traffic by ISP address, and if so, can you block specific ISP addresses? Now you can within the performance placement or within the UI, correct? Are you still there, John?
That might be a stump the DJ question. I'm not actually sure of the answer to that one, unless you do.
Well, I know. Yeah, I haven't heard anything on it. I know, for example, in Google Analytics, you can exclude certain IP addresses from reporting, but I don't believe you can stop specific ISP addresses from your ads that I'm aware of. But you're right; it could have stumped this jockey anyway.
Well, great.
Anyway, that was our last question. Thanks, everybody. Those are really good questions. We appreciate it. John, you got some final comments?
Yes, I just want to thank everybody for attending today. We're going to be having webinars once a month, and so look out for other webinars that we, are hopefully as informative as this one. And feel free to email us with any comments or questions, and we'll get back to you, or ideas for future webinars. Again, we want to thank you so much for joining us. Hope this was helpful for you, and have a great day.